More analysis now on the handling of the pandemic by the various states and territories. Joining us live now is the Deputy Director at the Australia Institute, Ebony Bennett, and political consultant Terry Barnes. Good to see you both. Thanks for your time. Terry, as a former advisor to the Health Minister and now as a resident in lockdown there in Victoria, is this declaration from New South Wales that it won't be doing Victorian-style lockdowns a smart call?
Sorry, I think you've come to me there.
Some issues with Terry, but Ebony, what's your view? Do we need to be open-minded to these lockdowns, or are you taking heed of some calls we've seen from certain quarters that concerns really that the costs of ongoing restrictions could outweigh the health benefits when it comes to these very strict lockdowns?
I think it's very clear from international experience, as well as what we can see here, that public health and the economy are going to be in lockstep for a long time. And Victoria has shown it doesn't take a lot to have an outbreak. And this whole pandemic globally started with just one person. And because we've pursued an elimination strategy or a suppression strategy rather than an elimination strategy, this is going to be the risk for years to come until we have a vaccine or treatment, that whenever we lift restrictions, people will start mingling more, and the capacity for these types of outbreaks is going to be ever present. So I thought it's really interesting that a lot of health professionals are now discussing whether or not pursuing an elimination strategy would be in the best interests of Australia and its economy. But the other interesting thing, I think, is the ACTU's calls again for paid leave for people who have to self-isolate. So people are asked to self-isolate for a period of 14 days. And if you're someone like myself who can work from home easily, that's fine. But not everyone is in that position. And also, if we're relying on people to go and get themselves tested, to be able to track these cases and to find outbreaks when they occur in small numbers, we are really relying on the public just doing the right thing here. And if they're not going to be able to pay their rent or put food on the table, if they can't go to work for 14 days, then that's a real public health problem. So, look, there's many issues on the table here. But the last thing I would say is that Australia Institute polling, and I think some Newgate polling more recently released, have shown that state border closures remain popular with voters. So while there's been some pushback against lockdowns, there are elements of, restrictions on public movements that are still quite popular with the Australian people.
Yeah, and of course all of this is being considered by the government as it comes up with this plan as to what to do post-September with the JobKeeper program. From all the conversations you're having with the industry bodies that I know that you liaise with a lot, what direction do you think we're going to head in as we see Victoria facing these lockdowns? It's becoming clearer and clearer that particular parts of the country are going to need continuing help for longer than others.
Yeah, that's right. And I think the key here is that government spending is going to remain crucial. And if in the mini budget we see that the Morrison government chooses to really cut public spending in any way, that's going to have huge and profound implications and probably push us further into recession and prolong the recession in the long term as well. Public spending is really the only thing propping up the economy at the moment because of the nature of the pandemic. So it's going to be really interesting to see what the government chooses to do with JobKeeper. The Australian Institute research shows that they need to be really targeted in their spending. It's not just the size of government spending that's important, but the shape of it. And as you've said, there are industries and sections of Australia that are doing it tougher than others because of how this virus affects different industries. So, for example, areas that are heavily rely on tourism are going to be doing it much tougher than those who, for example, have a lot of public servants or indeed construction, where we haven't seen, the types of job losses that we've seen in industries like entertainment and the arts. And in places like tourism. So I think the key thing here is that the shape of any economic stimulus or government spending is just as crucial as the size of it. But the key thing to remember here is if the government withdraws that too soon, that's contractionary economic policy. And I think not only industry, but everyone will be watching the mini budget when it's delivered next week to see that those payments, whether it's JobKeeper or JobSeeker, are going to continue in the short term, even if they're more targeted.
Terry Barnes is back with us. Terry, I'll get your response on the economic front, but also on the health policy front, which I know is sort of your special area. What do you make of this debate about suppression or elimination? Are we taking the right approach?
Well, I'm not an epidemiologist, I'm a policy wonk, Ash, but my feeling is that we should be aiming for suppression first and then go for gold if we possibly can. And certainly, as Greg Hunt was pointing out in his presser there, out of 6 out of 8 states, some territories doing pretty well, and New South Wales is still not doing too badly. But clearly what Victoria is telling us that suppression is still a challenge that we should not dismiss. So I think those who talk about elimination, and a lot of those who are commenting on it are not epidemiologists either, I should point out. Economists even are talking about it. I think it's too premature, but look, I think what I was saying before the internet cut me off was that different states have different needs, they have different populations, they have different demographics and geography, and strategies need to be tailored for each state and territory, and even for each region within a state, which is what essentially is happening in Victoria and what is happening with Glarus Berejiklian's approach to the Crossroads Hotel outbreak in New South Wales.
Yeah, and what do you make of how things are tracking there in Victoria, Terry? Obviously, you're in the thick of it there with the lockdowns continuing, and Daniel Andrews today not ruling out heading to stage 4 if necessary.
Well, I think Daniel Andrews is actually encouraging us all to do the right thing, and I think rightly so. But it would help actually if he acknowledged that while a lot of people out there, there are exceptions to the rule who do the wrong thing, he likes to highlight those. That at least I would highlight the fact that there have been failings in terms of the administration of his government, particularly in relation to hotel quarantine. I think a lot of Victorians are still angry about that. They're not politically angry. It's not a vote changer, I don't think. And I think generally the Premier has got public support. But I think people would like to see the government acknowledge that mistakes were made. And we're not talking resignations, though some obviously are, that's politics. But I think acknowledging mistakes have been made and people basically saying, that's fine, we appreciate that, let's get on and sort things out. But the other thing I think it's important with all of this is that we don't single out or pick on individuals or communities, whether it's, say, Altaqua College in Melbourne as a large school, which has done everything it can, I think, to take precautions against infections, yet has drawn the short straw in terms of being part of a cluster, or the individual has just been identified as patient 0 with the Crossroads Hotel outbreak, who happens to be from Victoria, happened to be at the Crossroads Hotel, I think the day before, or a couple of days before the lockdown was reimposed here. So I think we can't judge, we can't discriminate, we can't condemn, we just actually have to accept that we are all in this together. And I think governments messages in that terms of strategy and in terms of what they say to the people is absolutely crucial in regards to that.
Terry Barnes, apologies for those technical gremlins. Thank you.
No, that's all my fault, Ash. I'm sorry about that.
Okay, we'll figure that out later, Terry. Thank you for that. Ebony, thanks a lot. Speak to you again soon. Do stay with us after the break here on Newsday. The latest on the crisis will bring you all the data, with Victoria recording 238 new cases just today.